I'd like you to meet Rose. Rose loves going to school. She loves seeing her friends and her teacher, Mrs. Greenleaf. Rose's favorite part of the day is when Mrs. Greenleaf reads stories aloud to the class. When Rose listens to Mrs. Greenleaf read, vivid pictures are painted in her imagination. Rose loves talking with her friends about the stories Mrs. Greenleaf reads. Sometimes Rose has to read to herself. It is really hard for Rose. Pictures aren't painted in her imagination like they are when Mrs. Greenleaf reads aloud to the class. Rose works very hard with Mrs. Greenleaf every day to improve her reading skills, but she still has trouble reading her science books and her social studies books and even her math book. During the Battle of the Books competitions to show what students know about the exciting books they have been reading, Rose sits quietly.
Mrs. Greenleaf recognized that Rose was not able to take meaning from her books. The printed words in the books had become a barrier to information for Rose. Rose would need a different way to access the material in books. Mrs. Greenleaf had heard about accessible instructional materials, also known as AIM. Accessible instructional materials provide students who need them with content in specialized formats like Braille, oversized print, audiobooks, or digital format. But Mrs. Greenleaf didn't know where to start to remove the barriers for Rose by providing AIM. But then she had an idea. Luckily, she had heard about a team at school that uses a tool to help make informed decisions about accessible instructional materials for individual students. When the team met to discuss AIM, Mrs. Greenleaf asked to join them to find out about AIM and to talk about Rose. The team explained that AIM Navigator is a tool that guides teams as they discuss and make decisions about accessible instructional materials for an individual student, like Rose. It is available as an interactive tool at http://aim.cast.org/navigator. Print materials are also available. In the online version, learning supports for completing each decision-making step are available to help teams, especially if they've never gone through an AIM decision-making process before. When working through the decision-making process, the team using the AIM Navigator collects the decisions made along the way by recording notes in text boxes at each step in the process. All the decisions are included in a summary that can be viewed at any time, saved to a local computer, or printed. The team talked about the 4 steps in the decision-making process: determining need, selecting the right formats, acquiring the materials, and determining which supports are needed for use. In step 1 of the AIM Navigator process, the team talked about determination of need. The 3 options to be considered include: 1. The student can use on-grade level print-based instructional materials used by other students, or 2. The student can't use standard print-based materials right now, but requires the exact same content in 1 or more specialized formats, or 3. The student can't use typical print-based material due to a disability that impacts comprehension of information. The team anticipates the need for alternate material, usually made less complex so that it will be understood by the student. When the team talked about Rose, Mrs. Greenleaf explained that Rose's comprehension of information was excellent when material was read to her, but struggled with identifying words quickly enough to gain meaning when she read to herself. Because of this, the team determined that Rose was a learner who would benefit from getting the same content as other students, but in a specialized format. The decision and rationale were collected in the AIM Navigator. In step 2 of the AIM Navigator process, the team talked about identifying which materials were needed and selecting the right formats. When the team talked about Rose, Mrs. Greenleaf had a list of all the instructional materials Rose needed, including her math, social studies, science, and English language materials. She talked about Rose's skills and needs, as well as where Rose would be using the materials, like school and home. The team considered which formats would be most useful to Rose and determined that digital material would be best. The decision and rationale were collected in the AIM Navigator. In step 3 of the AIM Navigator process, the team discussed where to acquire the instructional materials from. The 5 potential sources of AIM include 1. The National Instructional Materials Access Center, or NIMAC. 2. Accessible media producers, where student-ready specialized formats are available to qualifying students. 3. Commercial sources, where materials can be purchased from publishers. 4. Free resources, where copyright-free material of open-source materials are available. And 5. Locally created material created through the use of scanners and other means. When the team talked about Rose, they discussed her IEP. They looked to the Navigator to provide guidance on selecting which sources to use for materials. The team put together the plan to acquire materials. The decisions and rationale were collected in the AIM Navigator. In step 4 of the AIM Navigator process, the team talked about which supports are needed for use of AIM. The 5 considerations included 1. Technology. 2. Training. 3. Instructional strategies. 4. Support services. And 5. Accommodations and modifications. When the team talked about Rose, they considered the technology that may be needed to use the materials. They discussed who needed training, including teachers, staff, and family members. They discussed strategies teachers and staff would use to assist Rose in using the AIM. They discussed support services required for the setup and maintenance of equipment. They discussed accommodations and modifications needed to use the equipment effectively. The decisions and rationale were collected in the AIM Navigator. After completing the AIM Navigator process, the team created a to-do list. The team members completed the tasks on the checklist, and Rose got the instructional materials in a way that were useful to her, along with training and support that she needed.
Rose still works with Mrs. Greenleaf on improving her reading skills every day, but now, when the students in Mrs. Greenleaf's class read to themselves, Rose does too. And during Battle of the Books, Rose shows what she knows about the books, just like everyone else.